At 2:13 a.m., the fluorescent light in the county general locker room hummed like a trapped insect, and Aria Kim stood with the metal door pressed against her hip while she counted her last $48 into neat, damp-edged bills. Her scrub pants were still wet at the hem from crossing the ambulance bay in freezing rain, and the chill had crawled upward until her knees ached and her lower back felt carved into one long knot. 12 hours had become 16 when 2 nurses called out sick. She had translated 3 intake interviews in Korean, 1 in halting Japanese, and spent 40 minutes calming a man who thought everyone in a uniform was trying to deport him. Her coffee had gone cold before midnight. She had still finished it. She counted again because panic made arithmetic slippery. 20, 30, 40, 45, 48. Her phone lit in her palm. Rent overdue. Final notice. Then another alert slid over it before she could swipe it away. Pharmacy pickup reminder. Min-ho Kim, albuterol inhaler. The screen brightness carved white into her tired eyes. She lowered it, leaned her head against the locker door, and closed her mouth against the rough breath rising in her throat. Min-ho had sounded casual on the phone at dinner break. Too casual for a 17-year-old who had wheezed through the last weather change. "I'm fine, Nuna. Don't skip your shift for me." He always said that when he was not fine. She had promised she would stop by the pharmacy in the morning. She had not told him she had $48 and a rent warning that used the word proceedings. A janitor pushed a cart past the locker room doorway, wheels squeaking in a tired rhythm. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor alarm kept chirping and resetting. The hospital never slept. It only changed who was hurting. Aria folded the bills into her wallet, tucked the wallet into the inside pocket of her worn coat, and checked the list she had written on a receipt in sharp, cramped block letters. Rent office, pharmacy, bus card refill, private assignment, Belandi residence, 7:30 a.m. She had circled the last line twice because the number attached to that assignment looked like relief if she could keep getting shifts there. Private translation for donor meetings and international calls. Legal adjacent language, high discretion, same-day cash transfer. She had accepted on an agency emergency board at 4:05 p.m. the day before, and had not let herself think beyond the amount. By 3:02 a.m., she stepped outside into a sheet of rain so cold it stung her cheeks like fine needles. The city was a smear of sodium orange and wet black asphalt. Buses exhaled at empty stops. Delivery trucks rattled through intersections with no traffic to slow for. She walked 3 blocks to save the rideshare charge, shoes taking on water with every curb. Her shoulder bag was heavy with reference binders, a small medical pouch for Min-ho, and the old tablet she used for glossary databases. Halfway to the night bus, she stopped beneath a flickering pharmacy sign and checked her account balance. Pending payroll. Available, $12.71. She boarded anyway, standing because the seats were slick and she did not trust herself not to sleep through her stop. The bus heater worked in fits, turning the air into alternating pockets of steam and cold. Across from her, a woman in kitchen shoes slept with her head against the window, mouth slightly open, rainwater drying in salt tracks on her jacket. 2 men in reflective vests compared overtime slips in low voices. Everyone smelled like detergent, wet cloth, and exhaustion. When Aria reached the apartment building at 4:11 a.m., the stairwell light on the 3rd floor had burned out again. She climbed by phone flashlight and unlocked 3B quietly, though she already knew Min-ho slept through anything short of a fire alarm. The apartment was one room split by a bookcase, with peeling wallpaper behind the kitchenette and a heater that clicked more than it warmed. Min-ho had left his biology notes open on the table. Formulas highlighted in yellow and blue, his inhaler resting beside a chipped mug. He was asleep on the pull-out sofa, one arm over his face, blanket kicked to his waist. He had grown 3 inches in the last year and still looked younger than his grades, and stress should have allowed. Arya set her bag down without noise, pulled the blanket up over his shoulders, and touched 2 fingers lightly to his wrist out of habit. Steady pulse, warm skin, no wheeze she could hear from here. Relief moved through her so sharply, it felt like hunger. She wrote him a note and propped it against the mug. Pharmacy at 8. Eat before school. Text me when you wake up. Then she peeled off her damp scrub top, changed into a black blouse and charcoal slacks she kept wrapped in a dry cleaning sleeve, and pinned her hair into a knot tight enough to hold through another shift. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror looked gray around the mouth, eyes ringed dark from too little sleep and too much fluorescent light. She pressed concealer under each eye with the side of her thumb, more for professional armor than vanity. The Belandi address sat in a part of the city where sidewalks were pressure washed before dawn, and lobby flowers were replaced before petals softened. She reached the building at 6:58 a.m., 12 minutes early, coat cuffs still damp. The tower rose out of mist and rain and glass and pale stone, a vertical line of wealth that looked untouched by weather. A doorman under a black umbrella checked her name against a tablet, then gave a short nod without a smile. "Service elevator, left corridor," he said. "You'll check in with household operations on 52. The elevator walls were mirrored bronze. Arya stood in a corner and watched the floor numbers climb while water from her coat hem beaded onto polished stone. 31, 38, 44, 52. The doors opened to silence thick enough to feel designed. No overhead announcements, no squeaking cartwheels, no alarms. Just carpet that swallowed footsteps and the faint scent of citrus polish. A woman in a navy suit waited beside a console table with crystal bowls and white orchids arranged as if no one had ever touched them. "Arya Kim?" the woman asked. "Yes." "ID." Arya handed over her license and agency letter. The woman scanned both, then looked briefly at Arya's shoes before returning the documents in a slim folder. "You will wear this badge where visible. Translation devices stay on encrypted mode only. No personal recordings. Meals for contract staff are available after principal service. If you require water, ask pantry support." Her tone was not cruel. It was procedural, the way hospitals announced policy before compassion. Arya clipped the badge to her blouse. Temporary linguistic services glinted in black letters above her name. "Understood." A man with a headset appeared from the corridor and took over without introducing himself. "You'll begin with donor correspondence review in the East Office," he said, already walking. "Mr. Belandi prefers summaries under 1 page. Prioritize legal risk and reputational exposure." The apartment was less an apartment than a private floor arranged to make space feel expensive. Marble that caught morning light in fractured planes, dark wood doors taller than any in Arya's building, art that looked curated rather than bought. Through one set of glass panels, she saw rain moving over the river in diagonal lines. Ferries carving white wakes across gray water. Her stomach tightened at the sight of that much glass and open sky. She liked walls that stayed close. The East Office held 2 long desks, 3 monitors each, and a stack of folders secured with colored tabs. Italian, Korean, English. Trade schedules, donor biographies, charity disbursement records, invitation notes with careful euphemisms and sharper implications between lines. Arya sat, adjusted her headset, and began translating with the focused rhythm she trusted more than sleep. Parse, verify, choose tone, preserve legal edge, avoid cultural misread. Language had rules, even when people did not. At 8:40 a.m., her phone vibrated once in her bag. Minho, took inhaler, ate toast, don't worry. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding and typed back, proud of you. Lock the door after school. She added a heart and deleted it before sending, then added it back anyway. An hour later, a catering team rolled in silver service carts for a planning meeting she was not attending. Porcelain cups, sliced fruit she could smell but not touch. She had not eaten since vending machine crackers at 11:15 p.m., and her hands had started the faint tremor she got when blood sugar dropped too low. She flexed her fingers under the desk until it eased. "Miss Kim," said the headset man from the doorway, glancing at her monitor. "You're needed in the blue salon for live interpretation." She followed him through a hallway lined with framed black and white harbor photographs. In the blue salon, 6 people in tailored suits sat around a long table that reflected chandelier light in hard, clean lines. Their watches looked like rent money. Their pens looked like rent money. No one looked at her when she took her place slightly behind and to the side, where interpreters stood close enough to hear and far enough to disappear. A woman in pearl earrings began speaking in rapid Korean about shipping insurance, customs delays, and revised inspection windows. Arya translated into English in a measured voice, keeping pace without swallowing terms. A man at the table asked a question without turning toward her, as if language arrived from furniture. She answered anyway, because precision mattered more than manners when contracts were on the line. By 11:17 a.m., she had translated 4 calls, annotated 2 pages of ambiguously worded liability clauses, and run on caffeine that was mostly memory. The rain had not stopped. It traced down the glass in thin, relentless streams, blurring the city into silver and slate. When she finally stepped into a side corridor for 60 seconds of quiet, she leaned one hand against cool marble and closed her eyes. Her body took inventory without asking permission. Aching spine, dry mouth, hollow stomach, a pressure headache starting behind her left eye. In her coat pocket, folded bills pressed against her palm like a countdown. She could keep doing this, she told herself, because there was no alternate version of the week where she did not. Rent needed money, not dignity. Pharmacies did not take promises. Minho needed steady medication, exam fees, winter shoes that did not leak. Need was a machine that ran whether she slept or not. From down the corridor came the muted clink of crystal and the low murmur of people discussing donations in careful voices. The sound of polished generosity drifting through a house where every object looked permanent. Arya straightened, adjusted her badge so it sat centered, and walked back toward the office before anyone could come looking for her and find weakness where she had worked this hard to look composed. She made it 3 steps before the headset man intercepted her again, his posture crisp in the corridor's pale light, tablet balanced in one hand like a clipboard in an operating room. "Ms. Kim, Household Operations needs you in the West Reception Hall. Immediate." Arya nodded and followed, smoothing her expression into neutral as they passed 2 housekeepers arranging white lilies in a low crystal bowl. Even the flowers looked expensive, thick-petaled and unblemished, their scent clean enough to feel clinical. Her stomach pulled tight at the smell, then hollowed further when she saw a sideboard being set with miniature pastries and porcelain cups for guests who would never notice if one went missing. She kept her hands still at her sides. The West Reception Hall opened in a sweep of cream stone, mirrored columns, and windows that stared out over a rain-gray river. 3 men in dark suits stood near the fireplace, discussing donation structures in clipped, careful English. A woman in a silver dress reviewed a seating chart with a junior assistant whose voice had the strained brightness of someone trying not to make a mistake. Arya recognized the rhythm instantly. Everyone here spoke with money in mind, even when discussing charity. "Badge," said a new voice. She turned. A broad-shouldered man with close-cropped hair and a black suit that sat too rigidly to be tailored stepped into her path. His earpiece wire vanished behind his collar. Security, not household staff. His gaze dropped to her chest, to the temporary badge, then to the folder in her hand. "I already checked in on arrival," Arya said, keeping her tone even. "Do it again." The conversation near the fireplace did not pause, but she felt a tension shift anyway, the way a room shifted around a dropped glass before the sound finished breaking. She handed over her license and agency letter again. The man scanned the letter and then looked at her face longer than needed. "County contract translator," he said. "You have no prior file with Belandi internal events. I was called through agency emergency dispatch." She held his gaze despite the headache pressing harder behind her left eye. "You can confirm with household operations." He did not move. "Any criminal record?" "No." "Outstanding civil judgments?" The question landed like a slap delivered with a smile. Arya felt heat rise at her throat. "No." Behind the guard, one of the donors glanced over, then away, his expression bored rather than curious, as if routine staff screening were ambient noise. The woman in silver kept discussing place cards without dropping her voice. Arya stood on polished stone with damp coat cuffs and an empty stomach, while a stranger catalogued her life in public. She had translated emergency consent forms for people bleeding in hallway beds, had kept panic from detonating into violence with nothing but tone and timing. And now she was being treated like a package at a loading dock. "Open your bag," the guard said. She hesitated for half a second, then knelt and unzipped it. Glossary binder, tablet, chargers, small medical pouch labeled in black marker, Minho. She hated that the label was visible, hated that his name sat in this room where no one knew him. The guard lifted the pouch between two fingers. "What is this?" "My brother's inhaler supplies." He turned it once, then set it down. "Next time, declare medical items at check-in." No one had told her to. The rule had just appeared because he needed it. Arya zipped the bag slowly so her hands would not shake. A low baritone voice cut across the hall before she could answer. "Keller." Every conversation dropped by a degree. The guard straightened instantly, turning toward the corridor. Matteo Belandi crossed the threshold with two senior aides and the household manager, his dark suit impeccable, tie loosened by half an inch, as if that tiny concession to discomfort was all he allowed himself. He moved without hurry, yet everyone adjusted around him as though he carried his own gravity. Arya had not seen him up close yet, only through open office doors and reflected glass, but the impression was the same. Restrained force, measured and deliberate. Keller handed over Arya's documents. "Routine verification, sir." Matteo took the agency letter, glanced once, then looked at Arya. His eyes were dark, assessing, unreadable. "Ms. Kim is cleared for language operations," he said. "If there is a concern, route it through protocol, not a public floor." Keller's jaw flexed. "Yes, sir." Matteo returned the letter to Arya directly. "You'll be on donor liaison and logistics calls through evening service. My office sent amended briefing notes at noon. Did you receive them?" "Yes, Mr. Belandi." "Good." He shifted his attention to the household manager. "Hydration station in translation rooms, contract staff included." The manager gave a small nod. "Of course, sir." He moved on, conversations restarting in his wake with almost embarrassing speed. Arya stood still for a moment, documents in hand, pulse uneven. The humiliation did not disappear because he had cut it short. It only changed shape, settling into a sharper awareness of how quickly a single sentence from him could redraw the boundaries of her day. Keller stepped aside but did not apologize. West study in 5 minutes. Port delegation. Arya picked up her bag. Understood. By 12:46 p.m., rain had thickened outside into a steady silver sheet, drumming lightly against glass high above the city. In the West study, Arya interpreted a discussion about berth allocations and customs inspection windows, while 2 men argued politely over percentages that could have paid a year of her rent. Midway through the meeting, the door opened without announcement. June Park entered smiling. For one disorienting second, Arya thought exhaustion had finally cracked something in her. He looked exactly as memory insisted he would. Charcoal coat still beaded with rain, dark hair pushed back, cufflinks understated but expensive, the same careful half-smile he used when he wanted bystanders to see charm and miscalculation. He carried a slim leather portfolio and greeted the room in flawless business English. Apologies for the delay. Traffic from the port was obscene. One delegate stood to shake his hand. Mr. Park, glad you could join us. Mr. Park, consultant. Arya kept her face blank and translated the greeting into Korean on reflex, each syllable tasting metallic on her tongue. June's eyes found her then, a small pause that might have looked like polite recognition to anyone else. He dipped his head, as if they were acquaintances from an old conference. Ms. Kim, he said, didn't expect to see you in this world. Arya translated the line for a delegate who had not caught it, leaving out the personal weight and rendering it as neutral pleasantry. Her pulse climbed anyway. The meeting resumed. Shipping schedules, bonded cargo procedures, forecasted labor disruptions. June spoke with polished precision and occasional humor that earned restrained chuckles. He never raised his voice, never interrupted, never looked directly aggressive. But every time Arya translated one of his answers, she felt the old pattern press close. He was always most dangerous when he sounded reasonable. When the delegates broke for a document review, she stepped toward the side table to collect updated notes. June moved with her, smooth and unhurried, positioning himself so their backs were to the room. You look tired, he said softly, smile still in place. Still carrying everyone? Arya kept her eyes on the papers. This is a professional setting. Everything is a professional setting when you're broke. His hand closed around her wrist below the table line, grip precise, hard enough to grind bone against tendon. Pain flashed clean and immediate. She did not flinch. That, more than anything, had always enraged him, her refusal to perform fear on command. Let go, she said in Korean, voice low. His smile widened a fraction. Debts follow people like scent, Arya. New building, same weather. A delegate called his name from across the room. June released her instantly and turned back with an apologetic expression fit for cameras. Arya placed the papers down in exact alignment because her fingers had started to tremble. Red marks were already rising beneath her watch band. The rest of the session passed in controlled fragments. Translate, breathe, annotate, ignore the pressure in her chest. When it ended, she gathered her equipment and exited through the service corridor instead of the main hall, needing 30 seconds without his voice in the air. The corridor outside the loading entrance smelled of wet concrete and diesel, a blunt contrast to citrus polish and orchids upstairs. A valet in a black raincoat stood under the overhang near the staff door, keys clipped at his belt. He was young, maybe 22, with rain darkening his cuffs. As Arya passed, she noticed his hands. They were shaking so badly the key ring clicked against the metal rail in uneven bursts. He checked the camera above the door, then checked it again. His gaze flicked down the driveway, back to the camera, back to the driveway, each movement too quick, too rehearsed. "Are you okay?" Arya asked before she could stop herself. He startled. "Fine. Yes, ma'am. Just cold." It was not cold enough for that level of tremor under a heated awning. She followed his line of sight toward the service gate. A gray sedan idled beyond the outer barrier with wipers running, driver unseen behind rain-streaked glass. Delivery vans came and went, routine traffic, nothing obvious. Still, the skin along her arms prickled. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. Minho. School ended early, going home now. Inhaler in bag. She typed back while walking, "Keep your phone on." Text went inside. She added, "Lock both bolts," then hit send. When she re-entered the private floor, the atmosphere had changed in a way she could not name at first. Not louder, not quieter exactly. Just tighter, as if everyone had been given instructions, no one repeated aloud. Staff moved quickly with formal calm. 2 additional security men she had not seen earlier took positions near intersecting halls, hands folded in front, eyes active. At 3:10 p.m., Household Operations rerouted her to the nursery wing for a last-minute interpretation request with a visiting donor from Busan, who funded pediatric respiratory clinics. The irony would have made her laugh on another day. She followed a junior attendant down the long corridor lined with muted landscape paintings and recessed lights that made the carpet glow pale gold. Halfway down, she realized what was wrong. The nursery hall was usually noisy, even in wealthy homes. She had learned that in hospitals and private contracts alike. There was always a toy chime, a caregiver's murmur, the soft chaos of young children resisting naps. Now there was nothing. No cartoon voices from tablets, no footsteps, no clatter from the service pantry at the far end. The silence sat against the walls like padded fabric, thick and deliberate. Her throat tightened. The attendant ahead of her slowed, then lifted a hand to her earpiece. "Control, confirm nanny rotation in North Nursery," he said quietly. A pause. "Copy. Stand by." From somewhere behind a closed door came a single dull thud, then stillness. Arya stopped walking. Rain tapped the windows at the corridor's end in a faint, relentless rhythm. Far off, an elevator chimed. The attendant turned back toward her with a practiced, reassuring expression that did not reach his eyes. "Ms. Kim, please remain here." Before she could answer, footsteps approached from the main junction, measured and fast, and June Park's voice drifted around the corner, warm as polished wood. "There you are," he said, as if they were late for dinner, and Arya felt the bruise beneath her watch pulse like a warning. June came into full view at the bend in the corridor, rain-dark coat traded for a fresh suit jacket, tie straight, expression composed enough for a boardroom. Behind him, one of Belandi's junior event coordinators hurried with a tablet and an apologetic smile. "Ms. Kim," the coordinator said, breathless, "we need you in the Grand Salon now. Live interpretation. Mr. Park requested Korean support for a donor segment." Requested, not assigned. Requested. Arya kept her eyes on the coordinator, not June. "I was rerouted to the nursery wing. Change of plan." June's tone stayed warm. "You're needed where the money is, not where the toys are." The attendant beside Arya touched his earpiece again, frown shallow but visible. "Control still hasn't confirmed the nanny rotation," he murmured, mostly to himself. June glanced at him with mild impatience. "Then do your sweep. She's with me for 30 feet of hallway, not crossing a border." Arya wanted to refuse. She also knew refusing in front of staff, without a direct order from Household Operations, would be filed as non-compliance before anyone asked why. She nodded once and walked, feeling June fall into step at her shoulder, close enough for his sleeve to brush hers. "You always did pick the worst men to trust," he said in Korean, lips barely moving. She answered in the same language, low and flat. "I don't trust you." "You used to." She didn't respond. The grand salon doors opened to heat, perfume, polished silver, and the hum of expensive voices. The charity auction had shifted into its peak hour. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light over rows of round tables dressed in white linen and dark roses. A string quartet played near the mezzanine, nearly drowned by conversation and raised paddles. On the projection screen, children's clinic photos cycled in slow dissolves between donation tiers. Wealth and benevolence staged as spectacle. Arya took her assigned position near the front platform, headset in place, translation feed patched to 2 donor tables, and the live stream channel. Her stomach cramped hard at the smell of seared fish and butter. She had not eaten. The room seemed to tilt for half a second, then settled when she locked her knees and focused on sound. The first segment passed in controlled rhythm. A hospital director from Busan spoke about pediatric respiratory care. Arya rendered each sentence in English with clean timing, neutral cadence, no drift. A shipping sponsor announced a matching grant. Applause rose, faded, rose again. June moved through the room like he belonged to it, shaking hands, touching shoulders, smiling for cameras. Every time he glanced her way, her skin went cold beneath her blouse. By 7:52 p.m., the rain outside had deepened into a steady drumming against the high glass, a muted percussion behind the auctioneer's voice. Arya caught Keller at the edge of the room, speaking into his cuff mic, jaw tight. 2 additional security men had taken positions near the service exits. She remembered the trembling valet, the silent nursery hall, the gray sedan idling beyond the gate. Pattern rupture on top of pattern rupture. The auctioneer announced an intermission for a private donor pledge. June stepped onto the platform before anyone called him, one hand lifted in easy apology. "If I may," he said into the microphone, smile precise. "There's a procedural matter affecting donor confidence, better handled transparently." A ripple moved through the room. Heads turned. Matteo Balanda, seated at the central table with trustees, went still in a way that drew attention without movement. He did not speak. June looked toward Arya. "Miss Kim, join me, please. Translation may be required." Every eye in the front half of the salon shifted to her. Arya walked to the platform because refusing now would only feed whatever he had prepared. Her throat had started to close, breath thin and high. June continued in English, voice polished for the room. "As many of you know, cross-border philanthropic structures demand strict confidentiality. This afternoon, sensitive ledger references were accessed outside authorized channels." A trustee frowned. "What are you alleging, Mr. Park?" "I'm not alleging. I'm clarifying risk." He opened his leather portfolio and withdrew printed screenshots. Credential traces point to a temporary contractor account. Arya heard her own pulse in her ears. "That is false," she said, mic catching the edge of her voice. "My access was limited to assigned translation folders." June turned to her with public sympathy. "Then you won't object to a bag check, Arya?" "Not Miss Kim now?" "Arya. Personal, intimate, diminishing all at once." Keller stepped forward, uncertain glance flicking to Matteo. Matteo's expression did not change, but his voice carried across the platform, low and controlled. "Protocol first," quietly. June overrode him by half a beat, lifting his palm toward the audience with a soft laugh. If this were quiet, it would become rumor by midnight. We're all adults. Let's close it cleanly. He reached for Arya's shoulder bag before she could move it behind her leg. She held on. For 1 second, they stood locked, fabric strap taut between them. Then he yanked hard. The bag slipped from her grip and hit the table with a crack that startled the nearest donors. He unzipped it and inverted it in one sharp motion. Contents spilled across white linen and polished wood. Glossary binder, tablet, chargers, her worn wallet, Minho's medical pouch, zipper half open from inspection earlier. Inhaler canisters rolled, clicked against crystal stemware, and came to rest beside auction paddles stamped with donor numbers. A prescription bottle bounced once and spun, label facing outward under chandelier light. Silence landed, thick and immediate. June looked at the inhalers, then at Arya, expression soft with counterfeit concern. "Personal medications in a secure event zone," he said. "Undeclared items, unvetted data devices. This is exactly how leaks happen." Humiliation hit like heat, then cold. Arya's hands shook as she reached for the canisters. "Those are for my brother. Give me my bag." A woman at table 6 whispered something behind her hand. Another guest lifted a phone before a security aide quietly lowered it. The quartet had stopped playing. June's phone buzzed in his hand. He looked down, then turned the screen toward Arya at waist level, hidden from most of the room. Her knees almost gave out. Minho sat in a metal chair in a dim office she recognized from old port admin photos. Wrists zip-tied in front, mouth uncovered, eyes wide and furious more than afraid. A wall clock behind him read 7:54. Rain rattled on corrugated roofing overhead. Someone off camera laughed once. Then the video cut to a still frame and a location pin. Pier 9, South Storage. June kept smiling at the room while he spoke through his teeth in Korean. One scream, one wrong word, and he spends the night learning consequences. Arya stared at the screen, vision tunneling. Sound in the salon dulled to a distant roar. Her body forgot sequence, breathe, stand, think, and clung to one fact. Minho alive at 7:54 p.m. She whispered, barely audible, "If you touch him." "I already did." His jaw twitched for the first time all evening. "Where is the ring?" "What ring?" "The one you stopped wearing the week you left me." He tilted the phone, showing Minho again for one brutal second. "Don't make me repeat myself in front of your new employers." Keller stepped closer to the platform, reading her face now, not June's theater. Mateo rose from his chair at the central table, napkin untouched beside his plate, and walked toward them with measured steps that cut through the frozen room. "Mr. Park," Mateo said, voice quiet enough that people leaned in. "You will hand me that phone." June shifted into offended professionalism. "Mr. Belandi, with respect, your contractor is compromised and emotional. We should isolate her devices immediately." Arya tried to answer, but her throat locked. Her hands were numb. Minho's inhaler lay under the edge of a silver charger stand, just out of reach. She saw that detail with punishing clarity and almost nothing else. Mateo's gaze moved from the scattered medications to Arya's face, then to June's hand on the phone. Something in his expression hardened, not loud, not dramatic, just final. "Clear this room," he said. No one moved for half a second, shocked by the lack of volume. Then command rippled outward. Security began ushering donors toward side exits with calm, firm instructions. Staff collected nothing, touched nothing. The trustees stood confused, voices rising. Mateo didn't look at them. He looked at Arya. "Do you know that location?" Her lips parted. No sound. She forced air through a throat that felt sealed. Pier 9, she managed. South Storage Office. He sent live video. June stepped back, still smiling for the few remaining witnesses. You're overreacting to a misunderstanding? Mateo turned his head slightly. Keller. Yes, sir. Detain him. June's smile thinned. On what grounds? Mateo's reply came in the same low register, rage barely contained beneath it. You just provided them. Keller and another guard moved in. June lifted both hands in exaggerated compliance, then looked at Arya with a private, venomous calm that belonged to old rooms and locked doors. You have 10 minutes, he said in Korean, as if continuing a domestic argument. After that, your brother's air gets expensive. Arya swayed where she stood. The platform edge pressed into the back of her calf. Mateo caught her elbow before she fell. Grip steady, not gentle and not rough. An anchor more than comfort. Stay with me, he said. The room had emptied to essential personnel in less than a minute. Crystal, linen, scattered medicine, half-finished wine, abandoned bid cards. Disaster staged under chandelier light. Mateo released her elbow only when he was sure she could stand. Then he shifted into pure command. Comms on, encrypted only, he said to Keller. Convoy in 90 seconds. Medical team pull Minho Kim's file from County General and patch respiratory guidance to field channel. Lockdown east and service exits. Nobody fires unless I do. Orders fired back in clipped confirmations. Earpieces lit. Feet moved. He pointed to the spilled items. Photograph everything in place. Chain of custody from this second. That bag does not leave my line of sight. A forensic tech from internal security appeared with gloves and evidence sleeves. Arya watched her brother's prescription bottle lifted like contraband and wanted to break something. Mateo turned to Arya again, voice dropping 1 degree. Can you walk? Yes. Can you think? She swallowed hard. I can follow instructions. Good. You'll ride with me. Keller approached with June restrained at the wrists, expression now stripped of polish. Holding room is secured. Not for long, Mateo said. Federal contact gets a priority call now. Tell them extortion, kidnapping, digital coercion, live hostage proof. Send the clip metadata when tech pulls it. Arya jerked her head toward him. Federal? Mateo held her gaze. If this is what it looks like, local containment isn't enough. He took a clean handkerchief from his pocket, wrapped it once around her bruised wrist where June had squeezed her in the study, and tightened it just enough to support the joint. Practical. Efficient. His hands were warm. Hers were ice. As they moved down the service corridor at speed, staff flattened against walls to clear the path. Rain hammered the glass harder now, wind driving sheets of water sideways across the river. Elevator doors opened before they reached them, summoned in advance. 3 security men entered with them, weapons holstered but visible. Arya leaned back against mirrored steel and pressed her free hand to her sternum, trying to slow the panic surge. Minho in a metal chair. Clock at 7:54. Zip ties. Breathing. She clung to those details like a protocol checklist. At 8:01 p.m., the garage ramp flooded in reflected headlights and wet concrete shine. Engines idled in a tight line, armored SUVs, a lead sedan, a trailing support vehicle. Men in dark rain shells moved with practiced economy, checking comms, loading breaching kits, sealing doors. Mateo guided Arya into the rear seat of the center SUV and climbed in beside her. Keller took front passenger. The vehicle pulled out before the door thunk fully settled, tires hissing over water. Inside, the cabin smelled like leather, rain, and gun oil. A tactical map glowed on the console screen. Pier 9 highlighted in red. Playback, Mateo said. Keller patched June's video onto the monitor. The same office, same chair, different angle. Minho looked toward the camera and said something muted by distance. Arya read his lips anyway. Nuna. Her breath broke on the word. Audio boost, Mateo ordered. Static, then warehouse noise and a male voice off screen. Boss says wait. Another voice. Kid's got asthma or something. He keeps asking for his inhaler. Arya lurched forward. They don't have it. It spilled. They don't have it. Mateo caught that instantly. Field medic, prep rescue inhaler, and spacer. Assume acute stress trigger on extraction. A calm voice answered through comms. Copy. 3 days earlier, she had argued with a landlord about $70. Tonight, she was in an armored convoy with encrypted channels and men who treated timing like oxygen. The contrast made her nauseous. By the time they hit the bridge approach, blue strobes from unmarked units flickered 2 lanes over, folding into their formation. Mateo took a secure call, listened, and said, Hold perimeter until I say. No sirens at final turn. He ended the call and looked at Arya, fully present despite the storm of logistics around him. Listen carefully. When we arrive, you stay in the vehicle. Do not open the door. Do not move unless I come for you personally. Do you understand me? She stared back at him, rain-struck lights sliding over his face in hard bands. He wants me there. He wants leverage, Mateo said. He does not get more. The convoy dropped off the bridge toward the industrial flats, where warehouses crouched in rows of corrugated steel and sodium lamps. Rain blurred the world into streaks of amber and black. Pier 9 appeared ahead, gate half-lit, chain-link fencing rattling in the wind. Mateo's voice came low and absolute as he reached for the door handle. Stay in the car. I bring your brother out alive. The SUV rocked once as Mateo stepped into the rain, and the doors sealed behind him with a heavy mechanical thud that made Arya flinch harder than the sound justified. Through the tinted glass, she watched him cross into the wash of warehouse floodlights, dark suit jacket already darkening with water. One hand to his earpiece, the other lifting in short, decisive signals his men answered without hesitation. 2 teams peeled left and right along the chain-link perimeter. A third held at the loading bay with a breaching ram and bolt cutters. Keller's voice filled the cabin speaker in clipped bursts, reading camera positions, line-of-sight risks, and interior heat signatures. Perimeter set. East catwalk shows 1 stationary. Office block has 2 thermal returns. Mateo did not raise his voice. Cut external power to bay 3 only. Keep office lights. I want their eyes pinned inward. Medic unit stays 20 meters back until I clear. A paramedic in the rear support vehicle answered. Respiratory kit ready. Arya pressed her palms against her knees and forced herself to breathe on count. 4 in and 4 out. Because panic had narrowed her vision to a pulsing tunnel, and she needed her head clear. Rain striped down the glass in fast, bright lines. The smell inside the vehicle was warm electronics and damp wool. Her wrapped wrist throbbed under Mateo's handkerchief, and the ache grounded her better than any reassurance could have. Keller turned in the front passenger seat and held out a sealed bottle of water and a glucose gel packet. Drink, then this. She took both automatically. Any update on Minho? Audio from the last feed had him speaking full sentences. That's favorable. Keller nodded toward the paramedic van. Treatment is staged. He gets checked the second he is out. Her throat tightened around the bottle cap. She drank anyway, then twisted open the gel with shaking fingers and swallowed the syrupy sweetness that sat heavy on an empty stomach. Across the lot, Mateo pointed once toward the loading door. A man in a black rain shell moved to the chain with the cutters. "Hold," Mateo said into comms. "Federal status." A different voice came through, crisp and female. "Agent Nessa Cole, Task Force Lead. We are 3 minutes out on your north approach. Maintain scene integrity for transfer." "Understood," Mateo replied. "You'll have a live extortion video, access logs, and witness statements preserved." That answer mattered more to Arya than she expected. He was not improvising vengeance in the rain. He was building a case. By 8:09 p.m., blue and red light from unmarked units flashed at the far gate and washed over wet concrete like fractured neon. Agents in plain jackets moved to the outer perimeter, while Belandi security held the inner ring. Both sides tense, but coordinated. Keller lifted an evidence pouch from the center console and showed Arya, through the plastic, the screenshot prints June had used in the salon. "Tech matched the metadata," he said. "Fabricated credential trail, routed through a dead server in Newark. It won't hold up for him." She nodded once, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. "The gray sedan outside the service gate earlier. Did anyone run it?" "We did. Stolen plates, wiped interior, abandoned 6 blocks from the tower 40 minutes ago." Keller's expression stayed impassive. Decoy pressure. He wanted staff watching the wrong door. Another detail clicked into place. The trembling valet, the silent nursery corridor, the staged public accusation, not chaos, choreography. A sharp metallic crack split the rain as the chain gave way. Team 1 moved. Arya's hand went to the door handle without permission from the rational part of her brain. Keller caught the movement at once. "Do not," he said, not loud, not unkind. "He told you to stay." She forced her hand down, fingers curling into her coat. Through the windshield, she saw Mateo at the threshold, weapon low and controlled, one man on his shoulder, one on rear cover. He disappeared into the dark of Bay 3, and the warehouse swallowed him whole. The comm channel went busier, voices overlapping in disciplined fragments. Catwalk clear. Forklift lane secure. Office corridor locked from inside. Thermal moving. Arya understood perhaps half the tactical language, and still caught every implication in her bones. Then, clear and immediate, Mateo's voice cut through. "Office team with me. No discharge unless fired upon. Breach on my count. 3, 2, 1. A concussive thump echoed from inside the building. Not an explosion, just force against stubborn metal. Arya jerked at the sound and braced against the seat as if that could move events faster. Her pulse hammered at her throat, her wrists, the backs of her eyes. "Door open," someone said. One male surrendering. Repeat, surrendering. Relief came too soon and too thin to trust. Second male restrained. Another voice followed. "No rounds fired?" Arya leaned forward so hard the seatbelt bit her shoulder. "Minho?" Silence on comms for 2 long beats. Then Mateo, lower now, closer to his microphone. "Minor located. Conscious. Respiratory distress mild to moderate. Bringing him out." The world narrowed to that sentence. Conscious. Bringing him out. Keller opened his door before the words finished. "Medic forward. Now." The paramedic team sprinted into rain with a wheeled kit. Arya reached for her own door again, this time not even aware she had moved until Keller blocked her with an outstretched arm. "Wait for visual," he said. "You slip on this concrete, you become another patient." She hated him for being right, and hated herself for needing him right now. She stayed, every muscle rigid, eyes fixed on the warehouse opening. Mateo emerged first, walking fast but steady, coat soaked through, one hand supporting Minho at the back of the neck and shoulder. Minho's hoodie was damp, hair plastered to his forehead, face pale under the floodlights. But he was upright and swearing under his breath in Korean with enough force that Aria almost laughed and cried at once. Zip ties had already been cut. Red marks circled his wrists, nothing worse visible. The medic team met them halfway, slipping an oxygen mask into place and guiding him toward the van. Aria was out of the SUV before Keller could stop her this time, shoes skidding slightly on wet pavement. "Minho." He turned at her voice, eyes finding hers over the mask, and gave a furious nod that said he was scared, embarrassed, alive. She reached him as the medics loaded him onto the bench seat, one checking saturation, another fitting a spacer to an inhaler with quick, practiced hands. "I'm here," she said, touching his knee because tubes and straps left little else. "Breathe slow. Follow her count." The paramedic looked up briefly. "He's responding. Pulse is high but stabilizing. We're not seeing severe bronchospasm." Minho pulled the mask aside for a second. "I told them I needed my inhaler. They said, wait, I'm okay, Nuna. Don't..." He coughed and took the mask back. Aria pressed her lips together and nodded, because if she spoke, she might break apart in front of everyone. Matteo stood at the van door, rain running off his jaw, bloodless but visibly wired from the breach. "He goes to County General for observation," he said to the medics. "Security escort both ways. No media. No detours." "Copy," the senior paramedic said. 10 minutes out." As the doors closed, Minho lifted 2 fingers in a weak peace sign that had survived every bad week of their lives. Aria mirrored it through the glass until the van rolled toward the gate. The lot quieted by degrees. Agents walked a cuffed man toward an unmarked car. Another team photographed the office entrance and tagged a laptop, 2 burner phones, and a paper ledger into sealed evidence boxes. Keller coordinated transfer signatures under a portable light, each item logged with time and initials. The process was clinical, deliberate, and exactly what Aria needed to see. Nothing vanishing into back rooms, nothing handled off record. Matteo stepped closer, voice roughened by cold and restraint. "You should sit before your legs decide for you." She looked up at him, at the rain soaking his suit, at the shallow cut near his knuckle where metal had caught skin during entry, at the steadiness in his face despite the adrenaline still riding him hard. "You got him out," she said. "I told you I would." He signaled to a nearby agent. "Ms. Kim gives her statement under cover. Hot drink, dry coat, then interview. No one presses her for sequence until she says she's ready." It was command as care again. Logistics instead of comfort words. And Aria felt that distinction land somewhere deep and non-trivial. They moved into a temporary command trailer, parked off the dock road. Heater rattling, folding table crowded with monitors and printed maps. Someone handed her a thermal blanket and a paper cup of tea too hot to drink. Matteo remained by the door, while federal agents rotated through confirmations. Hostage recovered, primary suspect in custody, digital assets seized, extortion evidence validated. Each update stripped another layer off the fear that had driven her since the ballroom. When the trailer door finally shut and the noise dropped, Matteo removed his wet jacket and set it over a chair. The white shirt beneath was damp at the shoulders. And for the first time, she saw a thin old scar running from just below his left ear to his collarbone, pale against olive skin, not hidden so much as never offered. He noticed where she was looking and did not look away. "Knife wound," he said. 15 years ago. Aria tightened the blanket around herself. "Tonight?" "No." He rested his knuckles on the table edge, eyes on the maps without seeing them. "My sister Livia was taken when she was 16. School car route, daytime, 3 blocks from our old house. They used a fake municipal checkpoint and uniforms bought online. By the time we understood it wasn't a robbery, she had been moved twice. The trailer heater hummed. Rain tapped the metal roof in relentless small impacts. I was 19, he continued. I thought force solved everything if you applied enough of it. I kicked in the wrong door on the wrong tip. Got this for my trouble. He touched the scar once, almost absently. We found her alive 36 hours later because an interpreter at a bus depot called in a phrase she overheard and didn't ignore. Arya stared at him, tea cooling between her hands. An interpreter? She caught a dialect mismatch in a driver's story, reported it instead of assuming it was none of her business. His mouth tightened at one corner, not quite a smile. A woman everyone in that station treated as invisible. The facts rearranged themselves with quiet force. His insistence on protocol, the speed of his response, the refusal to treat her panic as inconvenience, not benevolence. Memory. What happened to your sister? Arya asked. She lived. A pause. She does not forgive cages. Neither do I. He lifted one evidence bag from the table, sealed and labeled, Arya Kim Personal Effects, Item 7. Inside lay a silver ring on a thin chain, tarnished from neglect. Her ring. The one she had stopped wearing the week she left June. Recovered from the office safe, Mateo said. Agent Cole had it logged before transfer. She agreed you should see it now because it may change your statement sequence. Arya set down the cup carefully so it would not spill. The room seemed to tilt again, then steady. He kept it, she said. Mateo watched her face, not the ring. You know why? She nodded once, then shook her head, then nodded again, anger and exhaustion colliding. Because he thought it was sentimental leverage, because he likes trophies, because... She swallowed. There's more. Tell me. She took the ring bag with both hands. The setting opens. Under the stone, there's a micro SD. I copied account ledgers from his home office in our last year together, shipping numbers, shell invoices, payments tied to missing cargo manifests. I never turned it in because I didn't trust local police not to tip him. Her voice thinned. Tonight he wasn't after me. He was after this. Mateo went very still. You've carried that alone this whole time. I carried what I could survive carrying. She met his gaze despite the tremor in her jaw. I was waiting for one clean path to hand it over without getting Minho dragged into it. He nodded once, receiving the truth without spectacle. You have that path now. Agent Cole will process the card under federal chain. You do not touch it again. Outside the trailer, agents moved past in blurred shadows. Inside, the heater clicked louder, fighting the dockside cold. Mateo straightened, command settling back over him like armor. But his next words were quieter than before. You disobeyed smaller men and survived. Tonight, you followed instruction when it mattered and gave us facts that hold in court. That is not weakness, Ms. Kim. That is discipline under pressure. Arya looked down at the evidence bag in her lap, at the ring that had once meant love, then fear, now proof. Her hands had stopped shaking. A knock sounded at the trailer door. Agent Cole stepped in, rein on her jacket's shoulders, file in hand. Hospital update, she said. Your brother is stable and breathing comfortably. We're ready for your formal statement when you are. Arya stood, blankets sliding to her elbows, and for the first time all night, her voice came out clear. I'm ready now. I'm ready now. Agent Cole set the file on the folding table and opened it to a clean statement form, her movements efficient, voice level in a way that made panic feel like a problem with edges. We'll do this in sequence. I'll ask short questions first so we lock timeline and admissible facts, then we'll expand on context. If you need water, pause. If you need a break, say so. She looked to Matteo without turning her head fully. Mr. Belandi, I need 10 feet. Matteo did not argue. He stepped back to the trailer wall, arms loose at his sides, wet shirt sleeves rolled once to the forearm. The old scar at his collarbone caught in the fluorescent light, pale and thin as a seam. Arya felt his presence anyway, the same way she felt the heater's dry rattle and the rain striking metal overhead. Constant, unavoidable. Strangely steadying. Cole clicked her recorder on. State your full name. Arya Sun-hee Kim. Current employment? County General Interpreter, contract. Private translation assignments through agency dispatch. Minor victim's name and relation. Minho Kim, my younger brother. The first minutes moved like triage. Timestamps, locations, the salon accusation, the phone video. June's Korean statements translated into exact English phrasing, no embellishment, no missing verbs. Arya answered with clinical precision, but each detail came with body memory attached. The crack of her bag striking wood, inhalers rolling across white linen, her throat sealing around air while rich donors watched and said nothing. When Cole asked about motive, Arya reached for the evidence pouch with the ring and kept her fingers on the plastic while she spoke. He asked for this directly, repeatedly. He called it leverage. He believed the ring still mattered to me emotionally. But that was not the core. The micro SD under the stone is the core. Cole nodded. Walk me through what is on the card. Shipping ledgers from 2 years of his logistics contracts. Duplicate invoices routed through shell companies. Payment chains tied to cargo manifests that were altered after inspection. Names, dates, account tails, and internal nicknames for handlers. Arya swallowed, feeling fatigue scrape her voice raw. I copied it over months and hid it because local reporting felt unsafe. Unsafe how? She held Cole's gaze. He had friendly officers on payroll when we were married. He liked to prove that reporting him made things worse. Cole wrote 3 fast lines, then asked, Did you at any point fabricate evidence against Mr. Park? No. Did you remove or alter Belandi data systems? No. Did anyone at Belandi direct you to steal records? No. Keller entered quietly with a digital tablet and passed it to Cole. For the statement record, he said. Security footage sync from West Study and auction platform, plus entry logs. Cole took it with a brief nod and looked back to Arya. One more branch before we pause. You noticed anomalies prior to the hostage video. I need each one. Arya listed them in order. The valet trembling and checking cameras. The gray sedan idling beyond the gate with wiped plates later confirmed. The nursery corridor silence, wrong for that wing. June's jaw twitched beneath polite speech. Keller's public badge challenge that created a social stage for humiliation. As she spoke, the separate moments stopped feeling like private paranoia and became architecture. A designed funnel from discomfort to isolation to coercion. Cole tapped her pen once. This is strong pattern evidence. Not enough alone, but strong when paired with digital and witness records. Arya exhaled slowly, then realized she had leaned half an inch toward the table, toward control, toward structure. She straightened, and the movement pulled her attention to Matteo again. He was watching her, not with pity, not with hunger, not with the detached appraisal she had learned to expect from powerful men. He looked as if he were standing guard over a line she had drawn herself. That unsettled her more than the shouting kind of dominance ever had. Cole closed the first file and opened a second. Now I need your consent on evidence processing. The ring and storage media can go federal chain tonight. You'll sign release and authenticity confirmation. Arya nodded. Do it. Cole slid over the form. Read every line. The paper shook once in Arya's hand before it steadied. She scanned terms about custody, forensic duplication, disclosure limits, defense access. She had translated 1,000 legal paragraphs for other people's crises. Reading her own felt like stepping onto thin ice and choosing each foot placement anyway. She signed, dated, initialed twice. Cole bagged the signed release with the ring evidence and sealed it in front of her. Done. This leaves with me personally. The trailer door opened on a gust of wet air. A field agent stepped in. Agent Cole, suspect transport delayed 6 minutes. He's refusing to enter vehicle without making a statement he claims is time-sensitive to victim safety. Cole's expression did not change. Any credible indicator? Unknown. He asked for Ms. Kim by name. Arya felt her stomach drop and clench at the same time. Fear moved first, old and fast. Anger followed a second later, cleaner, hotter. Mateo pushed off the wall before he spoke. No direct access, he said. He talks through counsel or through you, agent. The field agent looked between them. He says there's another drop location, and only she knows the code phrase. Arya's pulse kicked harder. June loved layered threats, nested traps, rehearsed panic. But he also hid facts inside manipulation when he thought it bought him leverage. She heard Minho's rough breathing in her memory and hated that uncertainty still had teeth. Cole studied her face. You are not obligated to engage. If we proceed, it is controlled, recorded, and under 6 minutes. Your choice. By 8:47 p.m., the rain had eased from hammering sheets to a hard, steady fall, and the trailer felt smaller than before, thick with heater air and wet wool in consequence. Arya looked at Mateo. He was already shaking his head once, a silent no sharpened by concern he did not bother masking. You don't need this, he said, voice low, barely contained. You already gave enough. Arya wrapped the thermal blanket tighter around her shoulders, then set it aside. Need is not the right framework. Clarity is. She turned back to Cole. I'll do it with conditions. He stays restrained. Glass barrier. 2 agents inside, 2 outside. Mateo stays in my line of sight. Cole gave one short nod. Approved. They moved her to a portable interview unit parked beside the command trailer. Metal box retrofitted with 2 chairs and a bolted table separated by reinforced plexiglass. Rain blurred the small windows into silver grain. June was already inside the far compartment, wrists cuffed to a waist chain, hair damp, tie removed, charm rearranged into wounded civility. He smiled when he saw her, and the smile failed to reach his eyes. There you are, he said through the speaker grill. I was worried they'd keep you from making smart choices. Arya sat without answering. Mateo stood outside the door to her compartment, visible through the narrow pane, shoulders squared, jaw set. She hated how much safer that made her feel. She hated that safety now had a face and a cost. Cole remained standing at Arya's side. Clock starts now. Mr. Park, speak to the claim you made. June tipped his head, still looking only at Arya. You remember the old dry dock office near berth 12? There's a locker room corridor with a coded utility cage. Last year you translated a maintenance audit there. Arya's mind flashed to rusted lockers, peeling paint, one flickering strip light. She said nothing. He leaned closer to the glass. Code phrase in Korean, 3 words. You gave it to me as a joke. I used it as a dead man instruction for file release. Cole cut in. Release of what? Insurance, June said smoothly. If I disappear without terms, documents go public in ways that hurt people she can't protect. Mateo's voice came through the open comm from outside, flat and dangerous. Threats in this room die on arrival. June's gaze flicked toward Mateo, then back to Arya with a tiny curl at one corner of his mouth. You always borrow stronger men and call it survival. The insult landed where old bruises lived. Arya kept her hands flat on the table and let the anger rise without letting it steer. You're trying to bait me into giving you emotional relevance. It won't work. He gave a soft laugh. You think this is about emotion? It's about ownership of risk. No, she said, and her voice stayed clear. It was always about control with you. Money, shame, isolation, breath. You tested all four tonight. A beat passed. Rain ticked against metal. The agent by the door shifted his weight. June's smile thinned. Then prove you're still useful. Tell them the phrase. Cole looked to Arya, waiting. Arya inhaled once and let her eyes settle on June's face. Not the cuffs, not the chain, not the old reflex to anticipate impact. I will give the phrase to Agent Cole only, on written condition that every linked site is searched under federal warrant and every recovered file is disclosed through protective process for named victims. June's jaw twitched. You're negotiating now? I'm setting boundaries now. He leaned in until his forehead nearly touched the plexiglass. You don't get boundaries from me. Mateo stepped into full view at the window, voice a low baritone that filled the compartment even through steel and rain. She gets every boundary she names. She is under my protection. The word struck Arya with a complicated force. Part of her recoiled at any language that sounded like claim. Another part, deeper and more exhausted, recognized the underlying structure. Not possession, but enforcement of a line she had chosen. Trust and fear collided so hard, her chest hurt. She turned to Cole without looking at Mateo again. Record this exactly. Code phrase is Yulbinoon Gutnanda. 3 words. It opens the Birth 12 utility cage account and linked Cloud Vault. He set it as delayed release. Cole repeated it, verified spelling, and signaled the monitoring tech. Task it now. June's composure slipped for the first time. Arya, stop. You don't know who that burns. She met his stare. You don't own fear anymore. Silence followed, heavy and absolute. June looked at her as if she had become like someone he had failed to predict. And in that look, she saw the final fracture in his leverage. Cole checked her watch. 2 minutes left. Any additional material claim, Mr. Park? He sat back, breathing sharper through his nose, charm stripped clean. No. Interview terminated. The speaker clicked off. Agents opened June's side door and moved him out with practiced restraint. No spectacle, no shouting, just the clean mechanics of custody. He tried once to twist back for another look at Arya, but the chain at his waist checked the motion and the door shut between them. Inside her compartment, Arya stayed seated until her knees stopped trembling. Mateo opened her door only after Cole gave a nod. He did not touch her, only stood close enough that the cold draft off the dock could not reach her directly. You did well, he said. She looked up at him, eyes burning from fatigue and adrenaline, and everything she still did not know how to name. Don't make me into something fragile because I shook. His answer came immediately. I'm not. I saw steel. Agent Cole stepped in with her phone raised from an incoming secure message. Search team confirms the Birth 12 cage exists. Warrant signed electronically. We move in 5. She gave Arya a long, assessing look that held professional respect without softness. Your condition stands. Victim protective disclosure will be attached to this case file. Araya nodded once, throat tight but open, and rose to her feet on her own. Agent Cole moved with her into the main trailer and handed orders through 3 channels at once, each response snapping back in terse confirmations that made the dockside chaos feel containable. A live map of Berth 12 bloomed across the center monitor, and Arya watched the search team icons stack at the old dry dock corridor she remembered, the one with rusted lockers and a flickering strip light. Mateo stayed beside the door, silent now, wet hair combed back with one impatient pass of his hand, eyes on the screen and on her in alternating checks. "Warrant team is in," Cole said. "Code accepted on first pass. Utility cage is opening." The feed switched to body cam footage. Chipped concrete, flaking green paint, a steel cage door with a keypad plate hanging crooked on one screw. A federal technician pulled the door wide with gloved hands. Inside, shelves held 3 lock boxes, a weatherproof hard case, and 2 paper cartons wrapped in shipping tape. Cole started dictating chain entries before anyone touched anything. Item Group A through F, recovered Berth 12 utility cage. Time 21:03. Recording continuous. Every piece was logged on camera. Box 1 held passports under different names, a stack of prepaid phones, and a ledger with port codes that matched entries Arya had copied years ago. Box 2 held unsigned contracts, cash bands, and a slim black pistol sealed untouched into evidence. The hard case contained 2 encrypted drives and printed photos of shipping containers with handwritten dates in June's sharp block script. The last carton held personnel files, including one for the trembling valet from Belandi's service entrance. Arya leaned closer, throat tightening. "Pause on that folder." The camera zoomed. Debt notices, threat texts, a photo of the valet's mother entering a dialysis clinic. Cole glanced at her. "Name's Diego Marquez. He gave preliminary statement 10 minutes ago. Said Park coerced him to watch camera loops and signal when internal security rotated." Arya closed her eyes once, briefly. The shaking had not been fear of getting fired. It had been terror with a target. The second folder in that carton was labeled Nursery Wing in red marker. Inside were floor plans, nanny schedules, and an instruction sheet that read, "Quiet corridor window, 15 minutes. Arya's stomach turned cold. The silence she had felt was engineered, time to draw staff thin and isolate movement without tripping an alarm. Cole kept reading off recoveries. Gray sedan key fob, stolen plate kit, false contractor badge stock, and printed screenshots used in the ballroom accusation. That closes the staging loop. Keller exhaled at her shoulder, a contained sound of anger. He built every humiliation as a tactical step. "Yes," Arya said, voice steady now. That was always his method. By 10:15 p.m., Cole had the micro SD removed from the ring setting by a forensic tech under full video, sealed into a separate pouch and matched against the Berth 12 drives. Hash signatures aligned. Nothing had been altered since Arya copied it. The proof that had lived under a stone for years now sat under federal lock with 3 witnesses and 6 camera angles. Only then did Cole turn to her with the first trace of softness she had shown all night. "You can go to your brother. We have what we need for remand, charges, and financial seizure." Arya's knees weakened with relief, sharp enough to hurt. Mateo stepped forward, not touching her, only clearing a path to the trailer door. "Car is ready." The hospital corridor at County General smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee, familiar and almost tender after wet concrete and gun oil. Minho was propped in a monitored bed in pediatric step-down, despite being almost an adult. Oxygen off now, a nebulizer mask hanging idle from the rail. His hair was still messy, his wrists banded with faint red marks, and his first expression when he saw her was irritation that tried and failed to hide fear. "You look worse than I do," he said. Her laugh broke halfway and reformed as a shaky breath. She sat on the bed edge and pressed her forehead to his for a second before she answered, "You are not allowed to scare me like that again." "Noted." He glanced past her toward Matteo waiting by the curtain line. "Is that the guy who told 5 armed men to stop talking because they were making me cough?" Matteo answered himself. "Yes." Minho gave a solemn nod. "Good call." A respiratory nurse came in, checked saturation, and reviewed inhaler timing with the brisk kindness of someone who had seen too many families on their worst nights. She placed 2 replacement inhalers and a spacer in a clear discharge bag, labeled with Minho's name. Arya watched the bag as if it were gold. At 11:02 p.m., a Federal Victim Services coordinator joined them with a tablet and printed forms. No euphemisms, no patronizing tone. She explained emergency financial protection, temporary rent hold orders, and medical coverage continuity tied to cooperation status. Arya read each line before signing, and the coordinator countersigned on the spot. "Your landlord receives this order tonight," the coordinator said. "No eviction action can proceed while you are an active witness. Pharmacy reimbursement is pre-approved for your brother's respiratory meds. You'll get confirmation in your email within the hour." Arya checked her phone. The overdue rent notifications were still there, but beneath them appeared a new message from the city housing clerk. "Proceedings suspended pending federal hold." She stared at the screen until the words became real. When Minho finally slept, rain easing to a whisper against the window, Arya stepped into the hall with Matteo. The fluorescent lights carved fatigue into both their faces. "Keller is waiting with your property inventory," he said. "Anything held as evidence is listed." She nodded. "I want to see every line." "You'll see every line." In the administrative conference room downstairs, Keller laid out 2 trays and a signed sheet. Tray 1 held returned personal items, her wallet with $48 still folded, tablet, chargers, badge, coat, and medical pouch now restocked. Tray 2, sealed, held retained evidence copies, the ballroom screenshot prints, her bruised watchband photos, and June's extortion message export. Keller kept his voice formal, but his eyes stayed on the table. "For the record, I owe you an apology. My public credential challenge in the West Hall was triggered by a false priority flag inserted under Parks consultant clearance. I should have pulled you private anyway." Arya studied him for a long second, then signed the return form. "You followed a bad flag in a system built to trust hierarchy. Next time, don't confuse procedure with permission to humiliate." His jaw tightened. Understood. He slid one final note across the table. The junior attendant in the nursery wing gave a full statement. He sensed the corridor pattern was wrong and called control twice. That concern is in the report. It mattered. The loaded look in that hallway had not been indifference. It had been warning, constrained by rank and timing. Arya folded the note and put it in her coat pocket. By 8:40 a.m., after 2 hours of fractured sleep in a hospital chair, she sat in a glass-walled legal office with Agent Cole, a Belandi attorney, and Matteo across from her. Sunlight broke through storm cloud in thin, pale bands over the river. The room smelled like paper, printer toner, and strong tea. The Belandi attorney slid a contract forward. Security and translation role, fixed term, renewable by mutual consent. Salary, medical, and housing stipend are listed. These clauses define scope limits. Arya read silently, then tapped 3 sections. Add this: no coercive relocation without written federal recommendation. Add independent counsel review on any non-translation task. Add direct refusal right if assignments conflict with witness terms. The attorney nodded and made edits. She turned to Mateo. And I report to operations, not to you personally. His answer came without pause. Agreed. No surveillance inside my residence unless there is a documented active threat. Agreed. No secrets framed as protection. That one held the room still for a beat. Mateo met her gaze, expression stripped of distance. Mutual condition. You tell me when risk touches you. I tell you before I move pieces that affect you. Arya held his eyes and then gave one small nod. Then we have terms. They signed in duplicate. Cole signed witness acknowledgement. Arya took her copy and placed it flat in her folder beside the federal hold notice and Minho's discharge papers. 3 documents that felt heavier than any weapon she had seen that night. At noon, they joined a remote federal hearing from Cole's office. June appeared on screen in detention gray, posture still polished, but his voice had lost its easy glide. The judge read charges including kidnapping, extortion, evidence fabrication, coercive control, and trafficking-linked financial crimes. Bail denied, assets frozen, no contact order immediate and broad, covering Arya, Minho, and named witnesses including Diego Marquez and Belandi's staff who testified. When the hearing ended, the screen went black. No dramatic final speech, no last smile. Just process finishing what fear had started. Outside the courthouse annex, the city smelled scrubbed and metallic after rain. Traffic hissed over wet streets. Minho waited by the curb in a borrowed hoodie, discharge bracelet still on his wrist, inhaler visible in his jacket pocket like a small, bright promise. He waved once, sheepish, alive. Arya walked to him first and took his hand. Mateo stopped half a step back, giving the space and holding the perimeter anyway. Minho looked between them with teenage bluntness. So, he said, are we safe now? Arya answered before anyone else could. We're protected now. Safety is work we keep doing. Mateo inclined his head once, accepting her wording as the truest one. And you won't do that work alone. She turned to him, wind lifting loose strands of hair across her cheek. Contract folder tucked under her arm, court order in her bag, her brother's pulse steady under her fingers. No control, she said quietly. No control, he agreed. Only honesty, only protection you choose. Arya opened the car door for Minho, then looked back at Mateo and offered her hand. Not surrender, not debt, terms freely made. He took it with careful pressure, and they held that brief contact like a vow with witnesses, then let go and got into the same car, facing a future neither of them would pretend was gentle, but both of them would meet in the open.